Welcome back, everyone. In today's video, I'm going to cover game 46 of your First Book of Morphy. We are in a new opening, new middle game rule, which is number 9. Centralize the action of your pieces. And again, this just means whenever there is no threats, no, there's pretty much nothing to do in the position. You have to centralize your pieces, improve the squares of your pieces, improve your worst pieces. And the author does this by talking about force, right? When you centralize your pieces, it creates more force for your army. So we have the Scandinavia defense. So let's go ahead and get to the game. We have e4, d5, e captures d5, queen captures d5, knight c3, queen d8, d4, and then here we have e6, right? So the reason why we have this arrow is because e6 blocks the bishop, the light squared bishop, and the author calls this a weak move. It says shutting in the bishop, the light squared bishop. So the author recommended that black could go g6 and then play for bishop g7, knight h6. And this leaves the light square diagonal here for the bishop to use. After knight h6, you can return the knight to f5. Now another option is to play bishop f5 first before e6. Right, and then now you can play e6, and now your light squared bishop is outside the pawn chain. So we have e6 by black, knight f3, bishop d6, bishop d3, knight e7. Again, here seems like a conservative move, passive move, knight e7. When you have the option to play knight f6 and put your knight in a more active square. Castles by white, h6. And again, here the author comments that black's moves, queen d8, knight e7, and h6 are fearful moves, says the author. Again, suggesting that black might be intimidated by his opponent. And again, h6 does prevent knight g5 or bishop g5. Now we have bishop e3 and then c6 by black. And here the author comments, again, black would be less cramped with a bishop on g4 and the knight on f6, right? And this is something we had talked about before. If black had played his bishop out first to f5, then there would be no bishop. Most likely black trades light squared bishops. If black would have played bishop g4, then the bishop would be there and the knight on f6. So let's go ahead and compare to that position. Here in this position, black played f5 first, and when white played bishop d3, then black traded light squared bishop, which is why you have the queen on d3. And then you also have the knight on f6. So this is a less cramped position than the one that black currently has, which is a worse position. Okay, so c6 by black, knight e5, knight d7, f4, knight f6. So here, again, the author does say that one of the rules, right? One of the rules is from the book is being broken. Cramped positions ought to be relieved by exchanging. So if we look at the rule, if black is, if you find yourself in a cramped position, you can free yourself by exchanging. But in this case, if you capture on e5, then the f pawn captures on e5, attacking your bishop. And now let's get that on the board. And now you play your bishop out or back to b4 or c7. And now this would increase white's bind on the position. So it would be beneficial to white because he has a better position. So this is why black does not trade knights, and black plays knight f6. Next we have knight e4. And here white wants to avoid exchanges since his opponent is cramped, but one cannot have everything. The centralizing move also makes room for the c-pawn to contribute. So again, these principles, these rules are something you should notice first. Okay, I can free myself of exchanges, but you also have to evaluate the position, right? For example, in black's case, if he traded knights, then the pawn would now be on e5, and white would have a greater space, and he would have a better position. So even though there's principles, you don't automatically act on those principles. You have to evaluate your opponent's response and then evaluate the position after a few moves and decide who is better and why. So knight f5, attacking the bishop on e3, bishop f2, bishop to c7. So now the knight on f5 and the queen on d8 are attacking the pawn on d4. c3 to defend the pawn. Knight d5, now attacking f4. Queen f3, defending the pawn. Queen e7. Rook a to e1. Bishop captures on e5. And d captures on e5. And here, again, the author says that this is an unusual decision. It does release the f2 bishop. Now the bishop can go to c5 and attack the queen. But it keeps the f file closed because the f4 pawn is in the way. And also declines a strong center pawn position, right? So now if instead of d capturing, if the f pawn captures, then we could have gone into this position where now you attack the knight with g4, knight h4, queen g3, knight g6, knight d6, knight g to f4, bishop c2, getting out of the way, g5, and then bishop e3. Now we have h5. Now, so this is what white envisioned, right? So white envisioned that he was going to take here, and then black was probably going to play b6, stopping bishop c5. So this is maybe a line here that the author says that black visualized. So b6, now g4. So essentially the same attack, except we have the f4 pawn. Knight h4, queen g3, knight g6, knight d6 check, king f8. Now we have f5. Since we have the f pawn, we have f5 attacking the knight. Knight g to f4, f6, f pawn captures on g7 check, king g7, king captures on g7, bishop c2, right? Which opens up the black king. And then now this is better for white. So instead of b6, black played h5. So now we have bishop c5, queen d8, knight d6 check, knight captures d6, bishop captures d6. And here, black is 4 moves behind in development and trailing in king safety and center control. So the king is less safe than the white king. White has more center control. White intends to break open the position with f5. So as long as black can keep the lines closed, he will keep breathing. So black has to stop this with g6, which black does play, stopping f5, queen g3. Now here, white intends to sacrifice his bishop, right? Bishop captures on g6. So let's say like an a6, then we have the sacrifice here. So black goes knight e7, defending the g6 pawn. Rook d1, bishop d7. Rook d2, defending the b2 pawn. In case of queen b6, right? Queen b6 check can attack both the king and the pawn here. h4, queen g4. And here white could have, the author says that white could have reserved some mobility. So saying that the queen could have gone to a better square with queen f2. Now with queen b6, bishop c5. Instead, the queen goes to g4. We have knight f5. Bishop captures f5. And here the author comments, white's decision is critical. Middle games of opposite colored bishops heavily favor the side with the initiative, which is the ability to make threats, because the attacker's bishop cannot be stopped. So essentially, the attacker is going to be playing with an extra piece. The dangers are that the opponent will steal the initiative, or that both will reach an endgame. An endgame will arise, which will result in an easy draw. So e captures f5, keeping the g file closed from the queen. Queen f3, queen b6 check, king h1, and castles. Suddenly, white's king is in more danger. c4, h3, g3, bishop e6, attacking the c4 pawn. Now here the author does say if c5, trying to get the bishop here, it just blocks g1 from the queen. Again, I thought about this idea too. This seems like a pretty good idea. Maybe it doesn't work. Now here, maybe white can play king g1 to get out of the pin. Now bishop c6, the queen moves. And the author does add this other line. If queen a6, then queen c3, letting black capture the pawn a2 in order for the initiative, right? In order for an attack. So b3, which attacks the queen. So now the queen, black is in retreating mode. Rook a1, attacking the queen. So now white has the initiative and is creating an attack here. Instead of that, bishop e6, queen c3, defending the pawn. Rook d7, rook f to d1, c5. And here the author notes that there is some risk to take with this move. Both c-pawns are vulnerable while fixed on the color of the enemy bishop. Now here we have queen g1, right? So this is a prophylaxis move. If queen a3 first, then black has queen c6 check, king g1, and now b6, and now the rook defends the a7 pawn. So in order to prevent this, white changes the move order, right? So white plays king g1 first. So now that when white plays queen a3, there is no queen c6 check by black. Black plays rook h to d8, queen a3 by white. And again, there's two attackers here on this pawn. a6, bishop captures c5, queen c6, now threatening g2 mate, but the rook is covering that. So now the rook has to stay there to prevent queen g2 mate. Bishop d6, stopping the rooks here. f6. Again, the author does add if, instead of f6, if bishop captures c4, then we have b3 kicking the bishop out, and then rook to c1, and the queen defends the rook, so now black will lose the queen. So there is an alignment issue here for black. So black plays f6, rook d5, bishop captures d5, and rook captures d5. So white gives away the exchange in order to win the queen with rook c5. This compels black to give the exchange back. So black now captures, rook captures d6, e captures d6, king b8 to get out of the alignment here from the queen. Queen d3, rook captures d6, and now the rook is pretty much pinned. If the rook moves, then queen g2 is checkmate. Queen d2, defending the g2 square. Rook captures d5, c captures d5, queen c5 check. King f1, queen c4. And here the author notes that white has to be careful not to move his king to the e file, because then queen e4 precedes the queen's invasion on g2 or h1. If king to the e file, then queen e4, and now the queen can access these squares. So that's why white goes king f2. Black goes queen c5 check, and the game is a draw. So this is a pretty interesting draw here, right? And I think the computer said that here black is winning, but again, this person is playing Morphy, so he decided to take the draw. I wouldn't blame that person either. So let's quickly recap the game. The Scandinavian defense. Again, some details that we can talk about is the first one is that black could have played bishop f5 first, and the game could have gone this way. Right now, if the bishop comes out, we trade light square bishops, and now we do the same move order, and then now black is ready to castle, and I think it's a better game for black. Now, a better square for the knight is f6. So these are small details. Now again, what's another possibility here? Maybe castles? Or castle queenside? Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.